Arkansas and Georgia. That's why we got to do a Southern Crusade.
Well, when you talk about that this week unprecedentedly, and those of you who are watching us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, you can go to www.rainbowpush.org or you can text the word PUSH to 41444 and make a contribution. We saw in live and living color 2 hours of politics and circus with Donald Trump on CNN, and what was called a town show might be called a clown show, because if we've never seen a former president put on this type of presentation with inaccuracies, falsehoods, and outright lies, to the degree that the woman who was the commentator and the facilitator of it really stood her ground on behalf of all Americans. Just the whole idea that at the same day, by the way, a $3 million judgment against him was just unprecedented for us in American politics.
Well, I don't understand how.
A court leader did not tell the truth. He was a court leader. And they with him, his victim was exposure on our free time to his lies. But my friends, I want us to get ready to bring on a speaker for the day, Jonathan Jackson. Give Jonathan Congressman big hand. Who are listening and watching today, we need some financial support. I'm trying to raise $100,000 real fast. Because we have the largest civil rights property in the country. We meet every week, met for 50 plus years every week. And it takes money to run this place. It takes money to run staff, to keep it clean and all that. We're going to turn it into a museum. You will listen today or watch it, you may go to remembrance.org. Remembrance.org and send donations today. Your churches tomorrow can, I'm trying to get 1,000 churches with $2,000 to $5,000 per church. 600 memberships. We have an economic army. We've made tremendous progress politically in the last 50 years. Dr. King spoke in Washington August 1963. One black official in the whole South.
So
Reverend, Texas, right around. One in the whole South. We got officials everywhere, mayors and all that, congressmen and all that. We've not grown economically, we've grown politically.
So, Reverend Jackson, are you urging every church to take out an institutional membership and push so that we have 1,000 churches across the nation that belong to this movement for change? Are you suggesting that every student, high school, elementary, high school, and college student, or wherever they are, become student members of PUSH? Are you suggesting that those business persons who are listening and you get information, you come by here when you need help, are you suggesting that they also take out a membership, a business membership in the organization now, today, as we kick off Mother's Day? Are you saying every mother should join PUSH, or maybe your children can take a PUSH membership for your mother as a part of your Mother's Day present? Give her a membership, a renewed membership, or a new membership to Rainbow PUSH. It's only $35.
On the shelves, we were able to leverage our dollars. Leveraging our votes, we've seen it happen in the last 50 years. 58 congressmen, we usually had 6 in 1963. We've grown tremendously. Mayors of Charlotte, North Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina, Greensboro, North Carolina, I mean, all the hot spots have black mayors. We've grown politically. But we want to grow economically as well. We can grow. We have dollars to spend. We have votes to vote. We also have moral authority. I'm concerned now that sometimes it's kind of anti-civil rights acts. They undercut our moral authority. The minority group must have sympathy of the majority to move things. You can't take anything, white people. You can be appealing, you have leverage, margin of profit. Know what our weapon is. We moved in the last 50 years But anybody curse anybody out. Because we threaten anybody out because it burns up our own community. We probably because of litigation, 54 decision, legislation, 64 decision, registration.
So legislation, litigation, and registration. So repeat
Now
after him.
we're trying to get it where automatic registration. Shouldn't have to register twice. You're a citizen already. And what that means in Chicago, for example, last election you go in the booth, say, are you registered? You say, no. Register right there, sign your name and vote. It's never been that accessible before. That was cut down the registration rolls like a month before and all that kind of stuff. We wanted, I'm an American citizen, you should vote right then and where you are. In Chicago, there are 21,000 high school seniors. And one reason Brandon won, we got 8,000 of them to vote for him, seniors, high school, and 4,000 inmates in jail. If you are in jail, you're not a convicted criminal. You're there on what they call pre-trial detention. You're eligible to vote. So we got 4,000 of them to register to vote. The 4,000 to register to vote in Cook County Jail, 8,000 houses, that was the margin of victory. Your young people can fight back. We must empower them to fight. They must know how to fight back. And shooting each other is not a good form of fighting back. In the violence and in the madness. I want to make an appeal one more time. We'll call 773-373-3366. Freedom on your dial. Send a donation right now. Don't wait. Just go to your phone right now. RainbowPush.org. RainbowPush.org. I want to get ready to bring on esteemed Congressman. So proud of you, gentlemen. To do.
Give it up for Congressman Jonathan Jackson.
Good morning, Rainbow Push. First of all, happy Mother's Day to everyone that is present. Not quite sure the format or what should I step in?
The format is we presented you because we want to report from the Congress.
There you go.
We don't know what's going on, and we want you to tell us everything you know and don't know.
Well, I am.
Is that right?
Well, welcome
Give him a
home.
hand
Give it
again.
up one more time for our congressman. First Congressional District.
Well, this past week I had the opportunity to come back and share with you what I've been up to for the first 100 days in the House of Representatives. In summary, I've described the first 100 days as a true honor and a privilege to have your vote, to be your representative in the House. Since 1789, there have been, 234 years later, we have had 12,505 people elected into the Congress. There have been 175 African Americans to serve out of 12,505. And you have given me that opportunity to cast a vote on your behalf. There are a few cool things that can happen. And before I get back to my point, I'll digress. You know, if I'm en route to Washington to cast your vote, a policeman cannot stop a congressman from casting your vote. That's just how important it is. If a congressman is on the day of voting, is speeding to Washington, a policeman cannot stop you to stop your right from casting a vote. Now, I'm sure that was born out of some experiences of people trying to put up barriers and stop people from casting their votes. But that's just how strong a mandate we have to cast your vote. And every vote does count. But back to my point, so I've had the first, in my first 6 days in the Congress, people asked, I mean, if you saw it on television, well, weren't you frustrated sitting on the floor and they weren't able to make the deciding vote to confirm their speakership? I said, not at all. I was in a high back leather chair, nice air temperature, cameras and attention from around the world. But more importantly, when I started recalling the history of that institution being in the well since 1789, the same institution that didn't grant Phyllis Wheatley her freedom that had to be the first African-American woman to have been manumitted out of slavery. That same institution that looked at us as property where we couldn't bring our children and our names forward and couldn't have the dignity and the sanctity of marriage. That same institution by 1865, when we were breaking up the slaveocracy and had the opportunity to fight, that ended up passing the 13th and 14th Amendment to abolish slavery, to give us equal protection under the law, to give us the right to vote. That same institution now, in 2023, 234 years later, I was on the floor, and my first 15 votes was for leader, the Honorable Hakeem Sekou Jeffries. And each time I called his name, the child of Mr. and Mrs. Jeffrey, he knows his mother and father's name. He has the name his parents designated. That was not even a thought in the idea of the creators of the Constitution that we would ever have that privilege. For that, I was grateful that entire week. And it was on that January 7th at 1 o'clock in the morning on my birthday, I was able to be sworn in to be your representative for the 1st Congressional District of Illinois. So again, I say thank you. I see my Chief of Staff has come in here, Mr. Edward Ham Jr. Growing up with him at Fellowship, and Mrs. Ham, Grandma Ham, that hosted my father and his father that worked with my brother. It's good to have continuity on the other side as well.
Yes.
There is continuity in the Congress because there is Neil Gorsuch, but know that Neil Gorsuch, the Supreme Court Justice, is the son of Annie Gorsuch that started appealing to deregulate the EPA. There's a lot of lineage in there. So when people ask me, how does it feel being Reverend Jesse Jackson's son in the Congress? I said, fabulous. They said, but you know you're your own man. I said, that's true, and the son of Reverend Jesse Jackson and Jacqueline Jackson. And don't be confused about it. And we have a historical lineage, and we know the progenitors of all of these things, and we're here to continue the fight. So in these first 100 days, we were able to sign and be a part of 32 pieces of legislation. We have taken 2 trips abroad. I am on the Foreign Affairs Committee, Subcommittee on Africa. I am on the Agriculture Committee, Subcommittee on Nutrition, as well as Digital Markets and Exchanges. If I could tell you, and just give a testimony on how magnificent and marvelous and wonderful the good Lord is. And sometimes you just have to let him use you, and you don't know what the future is going to hold. But as my father's always told me, you know who holds the future. I wanted to be on financial services. I've been a runner on the New York Stock Exchange, working at 11 Wall Street, working for Mr. Daniels Bell at 99 Wall Street. I've been a runner on the Chicago Board of Trade. I've worked in high yield and distressed debt in Los Angeles and private equity. I wanted to be a part of financial services because I understand it. I've taught it at Kennedy King College. I've taught it at Chicago State. I've practiced it, but that was not available because of the way seats go on committees. And lo and behold, there was an opportunity to get on the farm committee, agriculture. And after conferring with Speaker Leader Jeffries, he says that'd be a very good place for you to go. You can do a lot to help our people on ag. So I started quickly reading up on ag. And my God, everything I wanted in the financial services is a function, if not a derivative, of what is in the Department of Agriculture. There is a farm bank. You can finance farm equipment. You can finance farm land. All municipalities under 50,000 are under the jurisdiction purview of the Department of Agriculture. So small towns and communities across the country are affected by the by the federal government. There are laws to rapidly depreciate equipment for farmers. Farmers want their crop insurance. And there's a spectrum from the cradle to the grave. You can see it all on the farmland. Then I started thinking about so many of the parables that Jesus used to take our mind, not on the table, but onto the floor, onto the field, so that you can see farmland. And what I've seen in fuel and food and clothing, all coming off of the farm. So we're not only talking about the farming for the ag industry, 50% of the grain that comes out of Illinois goes on to the Illinois and the Mississippi River and is exported abroad. 1/3 of that is going to China. So I've always looked at foreign affairs and agriculture as two sides of the same coin. My father many years ago told me we came here on a foreign policy. And I had an opportunity this past week in committee meeting when we talked about farm assistance and USAID and how we could provide greater crop insurance and help our farmers send products abroad. I had to remind members of the committee that after they had done the African trade agreement, that was the first time America has had a trade agreement with Africa that didn't involve shipping and importing human beings. That didn't happen until 2000. So when they talk about the Chinese in Africa, the Chinese have been investing in Africa now almost 15 years. China has not had a long-term head start on us. We've had a head start on China, but we've not used our energy and our moral authority to invest in the people that we have pillaged and plundered for so many decades and so many centuries. We've had the opportunity now to take 2 trips abroad, one to Taiwan to go on the front end. I was a part of the committee led by Congressman Ro Khanna, a dear friend of mine. He wanted me to see what's happening in the South Pacific region. And he also made me a member of the Asian Pacific Caucus, Dad. I'm a member of the Asian Pacific Caucus. And we are members of the Rainbow. So not only the Congressional Progressive Caucus, not only a member of the Black Caucus, the Asian Pacific Caucus, and look out, I'm gonna join some more. I'm a part of Congresswoman Lauren Underwood's Black Female Maternity Caucus. We have a maternity health issue in our ward, and real soon, following up on your request, Dad, we're gonna do a healthcare summit to look at healthcare with the 10 hospitals in the district so you can see what I see on how maternity wards have been taken out across our district.
Yes.
And you can see why Black females are experiencing higher rates of infant mortality in our community because we don't have the health services right here in the city of Chicago. The other part about agriculture, as we talked about for the first 100 days, is 75% of those funds in the Farm Bill have to deal with SNAP, the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program. So I said, why don't we look at this the other way? Not just talk about preserving crop insurance, which we absolutely have to do, but why don't we evolve the term from supplemental nutritional assistance to food insurance? When people can no longer afford to feed themselves, the government gives them some assistance. Same side of the coin. What does that mean? From the age of 18 to 25, when people join our voluntary military base, they are now 77% are unable to pass the basic physical requirements. We have children now that are overfed and undernourished. In our voluntary military program, from 18 to 25, they cut it off on trying to enlist people after 25. You know why? Because as we get older, it gets harder to make us pliable. As we get older, it's harder to teach. So the military, with their understanding of human development, don't want you to join after 25. That's another speech for another day. Or we have to mold some minds where they're still moldable, because some people, as they get older, they can't learn anything new. And we should all be able to learn for the rest of our life. Back to the point, 18 to 25, 77% of the potential candidates to join our military cannot because they can't pass the basic physical requirements. Then I was able to go to Kenya. I was able to see the front line of climate change, where millions of cattle have died off because of the acreage now that is parched, where the rivers that have dried up. So when you look at Sudan and Somalia, Tanzania, Uganda, you look at the Democratic Republic of Congo and Ethiopia, all merging in on Kenya. When I was last there 5 years ago for a presidential inauguration, we had to leave the hotel at 6 p.m. to get to the airport by 8 p.m. to take an 11 p.m. flight. After the Chinese did a build, operate, transfer, costing the Kenyan government no money, they built a 32-kilometer toll road in 11 months costing the local government no money. They built it, operated, and they're gonna transfer it over in 25 years. That same road now to get to the airport takes 15 minutes. There's an American company that still has the contract to build from Nairobi to Mombasa, one of the busiest roads in the world. We've had that contract for 10 years and have still not built 1 inch of a mile for that road. So Africans want to do business with Americans, but we need to stop lecturing people and stop trying to sell them bombs and missiles, as my father has told, and help them build hospitals and roads and institutions that better the life of their people. I would tell you, lastly, on the first 100 days, we have seen really a meanness in spirit in the Congress. Now, I go across and talk on the other side. I go to the Republican side and stand right in the middle, shake everybody's hand that I can, and talk to them. So some people on my peers say, Jonathan will talk to anybody. He goes to the other side. I said, that's part of the religion I grew up with. And the people from the first district want me to go and meet everybody on the other side. I just want to know that's what you want me to do.
Yes, yes. Go to the other side.
You have empowered me not to come back and complain, but to come back for a change.
That's right.
And
That's
tell
right.
you what
That's
we've
right.
done.
That's right. That's right.
So one of my Republican colleagues said, but Jonathan, if you come over there, you know, blacks are gonna call you all kind of names. I said, that's not true. I said, we know a rat when we smell one. I've never been called a name by people from my own community. So don't get me confused with some of the people y'all are propping up to send to black folks. We reject them, not me. So I'm gonna keep on reaching on across the aisle. It is sometimes a dangerous place up on the Capitol. I've described the first 100 days as probably 3 parts. Some days you get in there, you're in awe of all the history, you're looking at all the statues, all the monuments, everything is so manicured. This time of year you can smell the cherry blossom trees that are blooming around town, and you're just in awe of all the history. On another day, it's like a very competitive university where you're in the marketplace of ideas and you're trying to get people to sign on to your ideas and thoughts. And there are a lot of smart and very hardworking people there. And then on a bad day, it's like you've transferred into a bad high school. You really look at some of the people and say, are you serious? For example, knowing the tolls of gun violence, to see a grown man passing out AR-15 lapel pins. When there's a Lucy Macbeth from Georgia whose child was killed by senseless gun violence, when the children were in a car and a man gets out and shoots up the car and kills her son, and she had the impetus and the urge to run to make a difference. When you see a Maxwell Frost and a generation of young people coming out of Florida that have seen gun violence, that have tormented their lives and their children. Now, when you see these children across the nation, they're not doing fire drills. I need somebody over 25 to hear me, because you might not have been in an elementary school in a while. Children aren't practicing fire drills in schools anymore.
Oh.
They're practicing gun drills.
Gun drills, that's right.
How to hide under your desk, how to prop up the door, all the way down to when someone is shot with an AR-15, how to do a suture and stitch up your classmate and do a tourniquet to save their life. So when you wonder why children don't want to go to school, they can also look at this as a place of death and destruction. They can also look at this as a place where children have died and they don't want to die.
Right, right.
I remember taking my children to visit some schools in the city when they were in high school to figure out what school they could potentially go into. And one of my sons reminded me, he says, I didn't feel good going into that school. And I'm like, well, why not? I didn't do the tour. I sat in the adults' room. He said, at the end of the hallway where the lockers are, there's like a memorial of so many pictures of children that have died. Wow. Children are seeing this where the Schools are become mausoleums and tombs. We're seeing this far too frequently. That's encapsulating the first 100 days. And now what's up and coming? What's up and coming is there's a serious attack on deregulation and dismantling key provisions of our government. When I told you about Neil Gorsuch and his mother, Annie Gorsuch, who was part of the Reagan administration, who started defunding and asking for cuts in EPA. After Jimmy Carter strengthened it, their first attack was on EPA to take out the provisions of lead protection. What does that mean? When they built the Robert Taylor housing on the Dan Ryan, after having plowed through the African American community to make that interstate, there's history there. They knew very well that there were carcinogens from diesel trucks that were going into the air. So if you look at white neighborhoods, they don't let diesel trucks have the emissions in their neighborhood. The emissions of diesel trucks are put into the African American neighborhood. Illinois has the most lead service lines in the entire nation. Let me say it another way. There is no safe amount of lead that you can consume, and we still have lead service lines in our neighborhood and in our city today. Robbins and Dixmoor still has lead and water problems, and we sit on the Great Lakes where we have 20% of all the fresh water supply in the entire nation, in the world. 20% of the world's fresh water supply sits right here in the Great Lakes. And we've got communities like Flint, Michigan that sit on a Great Lake that can't get fresh water. I just want you to know there are systemic, structural, racist practices and patterns and institutions that we still have to dismantle. There are pieces in place that we still have to dismantle. So what am I asking you for today? When I leave here this afternoon, I'm going to a march in Portage Park for Everytown USA against gun violence. I can't help but think of Miss Mamie Mobley Teal.
Yeah.
We need some more Mrs. Teals that want to stand up and fight back for their children. Some days when I tell you this job, you start off in a deficit. You hit mountain highs and valley lows. I've seen my mother and fathers experience this my whole lifetime, but now I've been pushed onto the stage. I was comfortable on the side stage and the backstage. But let me tell you what a bad day can look like. You can come back home and be embraced and have a marvelous town hall meeting where we had over 400 people at the IBEW on 2722 South Reverend Martin Luther King Drive. I wanted our first town hall to be on Reverend Martin Luther King Drive. And I want to thank the leadership of IBEW for having placed a training center on Reverend Martin Luther King Drive. That was not by coincidence.
That's right.
So we thank the present and past leadership of IBEW. And that was marvelous. I thank you again for coming out. And it wasn't 24 hours later that I hear about Ariana Preston, an officer at 1 o'clock in the morning, coming back from her shift in Roseland with an attempted carjacking where 5 young people shot her. One person came up on her twice and shot her to death. I'm like trying to scratch my head and look at my phone and get verification and then searching on the local news. Is this true? Is it possible? Then a colleague friend of mine, OC, texts me and says, that was my grandson's babysitter, Ariana. Her parents came to the campaign office to volunteer and help you. Try not to cry.
It's enough to cry about.
Yes, sir.
In 24 hours,
Yes, sir.
back to back.
Yeah.
So I call her mother.
Yeah,
What can
John.
you say? The child did everything right.
Everything right.
I say that respectfully. The young lady, but she's younger than my oldest child. 24 years of age, leaves behind a mother, father who loved her, poured into her.
Yeah.
24 hours later, she leaves behind twin sisters.
Twin sisters.
7 days later, her parents were preparing for her graduation today from Loyola.
That's right.
With a master's in jurisprudence.
Yeah.
That's right.
And they had to bury their child this week.
Yep.
My heart also goes out to the families of the children that did the murder. 5 parents in our community have lost their children this week
That's right.
over gun violence. That's just one. A 16-year-old child that very well might have been in for a joyride is going to be tried as a grown man.
Yeah.
A young lady that was the car driver,
That's right.
Tried as an adult.
she's lost her life. All these senseless killings are going around. So I went across the aisle to talk to some of my colleagues. I said, can we meet anywhere halfway? Tell me your issue. I like you, you like me. Let's put some points on the board. Let's get some legislation. Let's make a difference. What can we do together? And I thought the person was sane. And the first thing out of their mouth to me, Bishop Grant and Reverend Wilson, how many black men don't have children, fathers at home?
Really?
I was talking about guns. What are you talking about? He said, well, that's at the heart of it. How many people are smoking that marijuana? I said, let me be patient. And then I showed him the picture of Ariana. I went downstairs and got a big board that I put up of Ariana, just so he would know where my passion and pain is coming from. And I had to let him know, sir, there's not one gun dealership in the city of Chicago.
That's right.
There's not one gun range in the city of Chicago.
That's right.
There's not one African or African American ammunitions manufacturer in the world. I need your help in stopping the flow of guns coming into my community. Then he says, there's not one ammunitions manufacturers. That's economic opportunity. Did you want to meet someone that manufactures ammunitions? I said, we don't need that sort of economic, if you say, opportunity. Anything that spreads death is against my religion, sir. I said, but maybe there's some other things we can talk about. He said, I shot an AR-15 and I killed a deer. Hit him in the side of the neck, and it was perfect. I said, now you're giving me the extreme examples. Then he started to tell me about the Constitution. The progenitor of the Constitution is the Bible, and the Bible's progenitor of that was, and he cut off. I said, that was the Magna Carta that came out of Europe. And if you want to go back, you can go to Mosaic Law and the Ten Commandments. I understand the progenitors very well. I went to church a lot. He got a little caught up. I said, but let us be clear. The progenitor of our Constitution that you have in a leather-bound copy with gold-gilded edge does not come from the Bible. That's a man-made document on governance.
All right.
He says, no, this was inspired, but it also had 3/5 of a human being in there. He said, but that was for the Constitution. But who was in the Constitution that was viewed as a human being and who was viewed as a simple animal? Well, I agree. I see what you're saying there on that. All in a day.
All in a day.
You can experience it. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a fight ahead of us. 75% of the ag budget is in SNAP, Supplemental Nutritional Assistance. And what does that mean? The government will help you get some nutrition if you can't afford it. I spoke with one of the CEOs of a major grocery chain, Reverend, when I was at a conference in Los Angeles. And I said, sir, I will be opposing your merger for your grocery chain. And let me share with you why, and I would love for you to share with me if there's something that should change my mind. But if this merger goes through, you will have 20% of the food supply chain in the United States of America. The nation's largest grocer and retailer just pulled out of my neighborhood.
Yes.
Seniors are calling that are in transit desert that don't have access to private transportation or mass transportation. We have no grocers. About 8 years ago, 2 years ago, Whole Foods pulled out of Inglewood, and then Save-A-Lot last year. And then almost 8 years ago now, Target pulled out of Fortune 50 corporation. Almost 15 years ago, Dominick's, a division of Super Value, pulled out. Almost 35 years ago, the nation's fast food convenience store, 7-Eleven, pulled out. We have a growing food desert on the most productive food land in the entire world. Ladies and gentlemen, that's race and economics and healthcare. We've had the opportunity in the first 100 days to have a cabinet secretary to come and visit us. I asked the cabinet secretary of Health and Human Services to come. I said, can we look at Health and Human Services to oppose the merger of a major food chain? He says, well, commerce usually deals with that. I said, I understand that, but the challenge I want to put before you, isn't food a part of healthcare? Can we redefine how we look at the challenges before us? So there was so much more to cover. And in closing, I would tell you on Mother's Day, from the garden to the cross, from Eve being the first mother, to Sarah at one point being infertile, to now having children, all the way up to Jochebed. Is that her name? Moses' mother?
Yeah.
Okay, Jochebed. I love that name.
Jacobeth.
Moses' mother. And if you look at the name Mary, the derivative of the name Miriam, she's in the family and in the lineage. The mothers of the Bible. Mary ends up taking her child to the cross. And Eve starts off in the garden. You all have this strong lineage of protecting mankind. Reverend, I tried to ask the women at the town hall, I want the men to step forward so we can do a march against gun violence. The women started booing me down and hushing me. Shh. The women aren't waiting for men to step forward to confront gun violence.
That's right.
And for that, I thank you. In the weeks to come, we're going to go on the most murderous corner in the city of Chicago in our district. And I'm going to call and ask you to join me for a vigil. We're going to show up with the pictures and the placards of our loved ones. We want to knock on the doors. There are things the police cannot do. The police have two primary functions. The police can prevent crime and they can solve crime. If we don't talk, the police cannot solve crime.
That's right.
There are too many people that are silent in our community.
That's right.
I'm just going to need a few people all the way from Eve to Sarah to Jochebed that want to fight for their children. Why do I want to talk about Jochebed specifically? The mandate was around when too many immigrants, migrants were coming and growing, and they wanted to kill the firstborn. There was a mother,
Yes.
Moses' mother,
Yes.
that protected her child from an illegal, immoral government policy. And everything that is legal isn't ethical.
That's right.
They were out to kill children. Now when you've got the #1 leading cause of death amongst all children in America is gun violence, and we sit silently by, there's a bullet with your name on it and my name on it. If you aren't nervous, you should be. These guns are now proliferating our communities, and they're increasing in frequency. We've got the leading cause of death amongst young black men is gun violence. And I had to share with my colleague from a distinguished district, I said the leading cause of death amongst women for gun violence is white women. And I've not heard anybody on this floor say that. We have an increasing life expectancy of young black males, but nobody's talking about in rural America, white women are dying at a younger age now. That just says we have bad policy, Bishop. That's not protecting the people. When I was in Taiwan and we spoke with the Ministry of Health, and I'm gonna have to get off this soapbox.
Go ahead.
Stay right
We
there.
spoke with the Ministry of Health. I was asking a benign question, sir, what is the life expectancy of the average Taiwanese? I think he said 81, 82. And I said, well, in the follow-up, is there any disparity in the rural areas, in the mountainous regions? Because it's a collection of islands. The Minister of Health started tearing up. He was embarrassed, he was hurt, he felt a part of the problem. He says there's about a 6-month, almost to a year life expectancy difference between the people that live in mountainous areas and those that are in the more urban areas. I'm scratching my head. I wanted to say something that could have been perceived as, that's when you shouldn't joke. I want to say, well, if somebody lives in a mountainous range, they're more likely to slip sometimes. I slipped on my stairs this morning. Like, if you live in the mountains, you're more prone to slip and fall. Like, people in Chicago can find some black ice.
Yes, sir.
Trying to run to the car. Nobody in here has done that. Okay. But you be careful running in the rain.
That's right.
Before you end up on your backside
That's
here in
right.
Chicago. You'll slip. He was hurt. And I had to tell my friend Ed, I said, Ed, that was probably one of the biggest takeaways that I had. We have the largest disparity in life expectation in the nation between West Inglewood and Streeterville. It's 30 years and it's not a headline when a black man is expected to live into his early 60s in Inglewood, West Inglewood, and a white man is expected to live to be 90 in Streeterville. Less than 7 miles apart, and that's not a headline. And that's true of Baltimore, that's true of Memphis, that's true of Detroit. We have the finest hospitals in the nation and in the world.
That's right.
And our people are dying in its shadow.
That's right.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we have work to do. And in closing, I want to say thank you. Stay encouraged. I had the privilege, under very unfortunate circumstances, to speak with Miss Mahan, and she will be here in the future. This is the mother of Ariana Preston. And I asked her if I could do a congressional resolution. She says, please. I said, I want to do a floor speech. She said, I'd be honored if you did so. And I said, and I would love to see you sometime. And she says to me, like a Mrs. Till, she says, I don't know what to do. I want to do something. And I said, well, I'm going to Everytown, USA to have a march today. She says, I would love to be a part of that. I got her the information. She says, I can't make it this Saturday because she had to pick up her graduation for her daughter at Loyola. Then she has to go to her other daughter's graduation. But this is a mother, Ms. Mahan, that you're going to hear from that now wants to do something. She's not having a party in pity. She wants to turn her pain into power. She wants to keep young Ariana Preston's memory, love alive. I'm asking you to join me back here next Saturday. Let's bring her out. Let's bring out the families. Our loved ones have not died in vain. In the spirit of Mrs. Till, Mama, we've got to bring some mothers along like Moses' mom that won't let government policy keep our children getting killed. Love you and Mary, and happy Mother's Day.
The one and only Congressman Jonathan Luther Jackson. Make some noise for Congressman Jackson, everybody.
Mom, Mother, happy Mama's Day. I see my own self's mama. I'm gonna stop crying one day, Mom.
No, you're not.
Let me tell you guys, number one, a miscommunication was gotten out. We always meet on Saturday for Mother's Day. We meet every Saturday for 52 years. So we meet every Saturday. Point is that today we should honor the mothers who lost their children. We'll do it next Saturday, the late Mother's Day, right? Miss Leaks, Callahan, find how many mothers lost children. Let's honor those mothers because some of them are now waking up. A little late for their children, but the principle is the same. When we read Mr. Farrakhan and others, we're going to take up all the stops. We're going to mobilize and we're going to stop killing where we live. So stop killing where we live.
Where we live.
Stop killing
Stop killing
where we live.
where we live.
Stop killing everywhere.
Stop killing everywhere.
There's a single black gun on in America. Not one black gun shop in America. What else sell guns? And there's not a gun manufactured in the whole world. So some people sit around and say, well, target that community. We're target community for gun violence. So no act. Other thing I want to address, John, is the Latin American thing. This whole thing about the migrants. People have a natural right to come across the border. You have a right to come across the border. You have a legal right to come across the border. We share 2,000 miles of border with Mexico. 2,000 miles. One side is parched, one side is green. Parts that come to the green side, no doubt about that. And if we have a policy with Canada, trade, policy with Latin America, shut them up. Shut down trade with Cuba. Cuba is the strongest factor in Latin America because we send weapons, they send teachers and doctors. Cuba sends doctors all over Latin America. Teachers all over Latin America. So we trying to destroy the government of Venezuela. We have no right to destroy those governments. People are leaving those governments now coming to America. We need a Latin American policy. So we need Latin American policy.
Latin American policy.
Humane,
We
economically sound, with Canada. Same with our African policy. We upset now because China has enough sense to invest in Africa. Well, Africa is the richest and biggest planet on the country. You get China, Europe, and Asia in Africa have some land space left. So give yourselves a big hand. So glad to see you guys today.
Let's give it up for Reverend Jesse Jackson. Those of you who are listening to us on WVON 1690 and watching us on Facebook Live, you can text the word PUSH to 41444 or go to www.rainbowpush.org. We don't want you to forget July 15th to the 19th right here in Chicago, the greatest civil rights convention anywhere, the Rainbow Push International Convention held at the Rubenstein Forum right here at the University of Chicago. And so we want to make sure if you want to join and be a volunteer, if you want to be a sponsor or contributor, go to that website right now, www.rainbowpush.org. Certainly so excited to say Happy Mother's Day to our queen of our movement, Mrs. Jacqueline Jackson. Make some noise for Mrs. J. Happy Mother's Day. She is the mother of our movement.
Okay.
One more time for Mrs. J, everybody. Listen, I want to make sure there's an envelope on your table, and those of you who are watching us, you can go to our website right now and click our membership tab. What Reverend Jackson talked about, this $100,000 campaign to help underwrite the work and movement that we have. If you're not a member, membership is $35, $15 for seniors and students. You can contribute right now. And so I want to make sure that you give online. Go to www.rainbowpush.org. We have 4 or 5 platforms where you can give. But those of you in person, I want you to make a contribution right now on behalf of the work of Reverend Jesse Jackson. If you have that envelope, go to that envelope right now. If you give a contribution of $100, you'll give a contribution of $100. If you give a contribution of $100, either stand or raise your hand that you'll give a contribution of $100. And of course, those of you online, you can go to our website right now and make that contribution, or you can go to that QR code and text that word PUSH, the 41444. It's so important. We want to make sure that you follow, like, share on all of our platforms. Reverend Wilson, it's been a great day. Happy Mother's Day to you.
Well, thank you so much. I am so excited about what Congressman Jackson recommended, and women. I want the men to march, however, but I think women, as we prepare for the convention, we need you here in great numbers. Call 10 of your girlfriends to be here next Saturday as we look at what are we going to do in terms of our protests and our participation in the upcoming convention. We have the power of influence, and we have the power of ourselves. Join us next Saturday morning. You got to be here at 9:30 to get a seat. So we want to pack it out as we prepare to organize for the convention. That is not to exclude men. I'm just calling on the women since it's
Oh,
Mother's
the men
Day.
are going to be here.
No, the women will be here.
Oh, the men are going to be here.
Women.
Men.
Women will be
Men.
here. I can look. We can do 500 strong next week. Are y'all with me? All right, because I see some women that haven't been here in a while. Reverend, look, we're going to organize.
Let's pray.
You want to pray? I'm trying to organize.
Join your hands, bow your heads. Meditate for a moment. You know, God, not throwing understanding. Forgive us for our sins, make us better, never bitter. Thank you for our children like John who grown up in our midst. There's a wise man, intelligent congressman, heard his evictions by his neighborhood, by his family. Even those, Ms. Muhammad and others who've come today, in spite of, because it's the thing to do. Mothers who are just waking up because their child got killed. And if I was to wake up before our child get killed, or prevent the killing. To do the killing must not find out him with the sanctuary, must not hide them, must reveal them, might know them. Bless the organization, many efforts. Serve the people they met.
Amen.
Let's give a shout out to Lily Sanders and Mrs. Geraldine Lambert, for some of our founders. Clap your hands for them, if you will.
Well, I'm glad our email system is not working. Email was out saying we were not meeting today. You all came in the house. I'm glad you're not in the email system. So I'm glad.